Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Fünfgeld. I'm a researcher at the German Institute for Global and Area Studies, short GIGA. And I'm a political scientist working mainly on energy and climate politics in Indonesia, Brazil, and South Africa. Maybe let me briefly introduce our research institution first. The GIGA is an independent social science research institute. It is based in Hamburg in the north of Germany. And we analyze political and economic development in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and also we work on global issues and questions of international politics. In our work, we apply what we call a global approach. This means we are working with perspective and concepts and experiences from different world regions. We try to incorporate them into our research. And as we are a member of Leibniz Association, we are also committed to the principle Theoria cum praxi. This means science for the benefits of society. This means we are mainly a research institute, but we also engage actively with academics and political and societal stakeholders all over the world, actually, in order to assure knowledge transfer. So that's what we generally do. Today, I would like to briefly present a new international initiative. It's called JETP'yi, or the Just Energy Transition Partnership. JETP'yi is a relatively new financing cooperation mechanism through which wealthier industrialized states of the so-called global north seek to provide financing to countries in the global south, and especially those countries that are highly dependent on coal, such as, for example, South Africa and Indonesia. Concretely, it is the G7 states consisting of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, the US, and the European Union that have signed agreements with partner countries. So the first one was South Africa, but then also newer agreements, JETP'yi agreements, have been signed with Indonesia, Senegal, and Vietnam. I will mainly focus on South Africa here because it was the first JETP'yi that has been signed, and also because I work on South Africa as well. And yeah, there's just has been more happening than in the other countries. So yeah, as I said, the first partnership was with South Africa. It was established at the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, so COP26 in Glasgow in 2021. And the partnership has a value of 8.5 billion US dollars. So that is the amount of money that has been like that G7 countries would, including the European Union, would pay to South Africa for transforming its energy sector. The agreement with Indonesia is a little bit younger. So it was finalized at the G20 meeting in Bali in 2022. And this one includes a financing package of 20 billion US dollars. So quite far higher than the South African one. So in both countries, this money shall be used to phase out old coal power plants and to invest in renewables, as well as in basic infrastructure that is needed for changing the energy mix. Like this mainly refers, for example, to grid connections within those countries, which are very, very important because renewable energy has some different requirements for grids sometimes because the energy is more intermittent. So these are just some technical issues to consider, but so that's why infrastructure, basic energy infrastructure is also included in the package, and it's important for that. What has been happening so far in those countries, there has been, like, for example, in South Africa, there have been first agreements, but in fact, actually, South Africa was already discussing issues of just energy transition before the JETP'yi had been signed. So now these older discussions and initiatives have been included. But like, for example, one interesting project that is happening here in South Africa is the decommissioning of an old power plant, an old coal power plant. This is now, which is now decommissioned, and now they are starting to build up a renewable energy training center there. So by that, they are trying to directly get the people who worked before in coal-based energy production, they're trying to get them directly into renewable energy production. This is kind of a tricky thing, and it has also been criticized within the country. Like, it has been questioned whether this is the right approach, but it has to be directly at the same place, and whether this is the right approach for the people living in this region. So you see already this points at the issue that justice and social justice and discussions about social justice are fairly complex. So a just transition, for example, requires not only taking into account the users of electricity or energy in general and their unequal access to energy, but also the workers in the fossil fuel industry, as I just mentioned, but also the people working, the new workers, the people who are going to work in renewable energy businesses. Like, so we can also question, like, what working conditions do they have? And for the users, for example, it's in both countries, in South Africa and also in Indonesia, access to electricity is still a big issue. In Indonesia, many parts, especially in the eastern part of the country, are off the grid because Indonesia is an island region. So they don't have like one connected grid, but there are several grids, and some people live in areas where there's actually no grid existing. And in South Africa as well, we have issues. There is a national grid, but there's also the problem that many people cannot afford electricity and from that grid. So justice also concerns access, not only working conditions. But furthermore, these are not the only stakeholders that we need to consider when thinking about social justice in an energy transition, but because it also means that we need to consider, for example, the population living close to energy sites, such as power plants. Like, this concerns the old power plants as well, because there, for example, we had the workers working in the coal mining regions, but then there's also kind of a second economy of people who are depending on that, these kind of businesses. Like, for example, people who are renting out their rooms to mining workers, or people who are having restaurants or smaller food stores. So they also depend on this industry. So we also need to think about them. And then this also considers the new energy, renewable energy sites. Like, for example, you probably might have heard about people who are protesting against like bigger wind farms. Obviously, those people need also be taken on board when considering a just energy transition, and we make sure that like no one is like dislocated against their will for those projects, and that more people benefit from this transition in a just manner. So, and also another dimension is the resource extraction sites, because not only fossil fuels, but also renewable energy needs certain resources. And like in these locations where these resources are mined or produced, we also need to think about those people. So you see there's like a whole bunch of different stakeholders that need to be addressed when talking about a just energy transition. And additionally, justice or social justice has various dimensions. So there's, for example, commonly we can distinguish between 4 different kinds of justice. There's, first of all, there's distributional justice. So who gets what, who gets the benefits, who gets the cost of a certain process. Then there is procedural justice. Like, how can we design a process to also include different voices, to have a just process, recognition justice, like who is being recognized as what in this process. And then restorative justice, like how do we deal with things that happened in the past? How do we make up for those things? So having said that all, it certainly won't be easy to address all the demands and needs that are potentially valid in terms of a just transition. And the process may require close interaction and the participation of possibly all different groups affected. So this is a really big challenge. But nevertheless, like, it is important that we start to talk about energy transitions, because this has been also ignored on the international level and in climate debates for quite a while. So it's good that it has been taken up, because it is so important to decarbonize the energy sector if we really want to move forward in terms of preventing climate change or preventing furthering worsening of climate change. And then it is also important to really think about, like, how we can do that in a manner that is not just switching from one technology to another one, but to also, like, include different parts of society and make sure this process can be sustainable, because it will only be sustainable if we can include different stakeholders and if people are supportive of the process, and that in turn results on questions of social justice. So I'd say we are at a good starting point, but at a very early starting point, and it remains to be seen what actually comes out of this process, as like of the first attempts that have been undertaken here in South Africa, for example. And additionally, there remain obviously questions of ownership, conditionality, agency. So in the end, who decides what is just? Everything remains contested. But well, I think at least this process has been started. There are a lot of these debates going on inside South Africa, and I assume they will also start to get more vibrant in other world regions. That said, so I'm hoping for just energy future. Thank you for listening.